The Galactic Academy was silent when Elias stepped into the training hall. The floor beneath him gleamed like liquid metal, and the air hummed with low, pulsing energy. Around him stood alien cadets from dozens of worlds, scaled, feathered, and furred, each beside their bonded creature. Some of the beasts had eyes like molten glass, others wings folded close against spiked backs. They towered over him, breathing mist into the cold air. Elias was the only human in the room, small, unarmed, and still. The instructor, a tall reptilian with armor of dark bronze scales, moved across the line of cadets. His eyes glowed amber under the overhead lights. When he stopped in front of Elias, the hall went quiet. "Human," he said, his voice sharp and slow, "you will bond with your creature. Only those who master the bond can remain in this program." Elias looked past the instructor. His assigned creature was unlike anything he had seen before. A towering four-legged beast with a mane of silver quills and deep black eyes. The others whispered and smirked. They expected failure. Humans, after all, were considered a fragile species. No claws, no armor, no venom, just soft skin and stubbornness. He could feel the tension in the air. The alien cadets around him stood proudly beside their bonded beasts, each one under perfect control. They used neural implants, commands, and chemical signals to force obedience. The idea of a natural bond was a myth now, something primitive and long forgotten. Yet the instructor insisted on testing this human curiosity. Perhaps for amusement, perhaps to prove a point. Elias stepped forward. The creature growled, the sound deep and thunderous. Its claws scraped the floor. The instructor watched closely, arms folded. "Go on," he hissed. "Show us what your kind can do." For a moment Elias said nothing. He looked into the beast's eyes, not with fear, but with quiet understanding. Somewhere deep in his chest, something stirred, a memory not his own. Forests, smoke, the sound of wolves around a fire. The connection was ancient, buried in his blood. He felt it rise like an echo of his ancestors, whispering in a language older than words. The creature tensed, waiting for his next move. The other cadets began to laugh. One shouted maybe he should try singing to it. The laughter bounced off the metal walls, cruel and mocking. Elias closed his eyes. Then he whistled. The sound was simple, clear, soft, almost like a bird's call. It echoed down the hall, cutting through the noise. The laughter stopped. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the beast's head tilted slightly. Its breathing slowed. It lowered itself to the floor, one knee bending like a bow. Its massive head came down until it rested near Elias's feet. Gasps filled the room. The instructor's eyes widened, his tail flicking in disbelief. Before anyone could react, something even stranger happened. Every other beast in the hall turned its head toward Elias. One by one, they began to kneel. The blue-scaled leviathans, the horned beasts from the volcanic world of Garan, the feathered hunters from Lyra 9, all of them bowed, as if answering an unseen command. The lights flickered. The sound of breathing filled the silence. The instructor stepped back, his claws tapping against the floor. "What did you do?" he asked quietly. Elias lowered his hand. "I didn't do anything," he said softly. They just listened. The instructor's crest flattened in disbelief. He turned toward the control panel, checking for interference. Nothing. No signals, no implants, no tricks. The beasts had acted entirely on their own. The alien cadets began whispering among themselves, fear creeping into their voices. This wasn't possible. No species, not even the empaths of Velra, could connect to so many beasts at once without technology. But the proof stood before them, breathing, alive and kneeling. Elias felt the pull still there, deep inside. It wasn't power, exactly. It was something purer, trust, recognition, the kind of bond that didn't need control. The creatures felt it too. He could sense their calm hearts, their loyalty, their ancient instinct that told them he was one of their own. Somehow, across time and worlds, the oldest truth had found its way back into the universe. Man and beast, understanding without words. The instructor turned slowly to face him again. His voice was tight now. "You will report to observation after this session," he ordered. "You are not to leave the compound." Elias nodded. The beasts rose as he turned to go, watching him, their movements slow and deliberate. When he reached the door, one of them, a crimson-scaled creature with golden eyes, let out a low, mournful call. The others answered it, their voices joining into a deep harmony that shook the metal walls. It wasn't aggression. It was reverence. Outside, the hall lights dimmed back to normal. The alien cadets whispered as Elias walked past. Some looked at him with awe, others with fear. He didn't look back. His heart still raced with confusion. He didn't understand what had happened, but part of him felt like he had done this before. Long ago, when humans were not small, not weak, not forgotten, far above the academy, in the orbiting observation deck. The council monitors had seen everything. Silent alarms triggered data capture. Every reading showed the same impossible result: 0 neural transmission, 0 implants, 0 signal. Just one human, and a hall full of beasts obeying him. The instructor stood in the middle of the now empty training hall, staring at the marks on the floor where the beasts had knelt. His claws clicked nervously. One human, he whispered to himself, and every creature answered. Somewhere down the corridor, Elias walked alone, the echo of that whistle still haunting the air. The next morning, the Galactic Academy buzzed with rumors. Every corridor whispered the same impossible story. A human cadet who had made the training beasts kneel without a single command link. The alien students avoided Elias now, their usual pride replaced by unease. Some called him dangerous, others called him lucky. But deep down, all of them were afraid. Elias walked through the halls quietly, feeling eyes follow him wherever he went. His uniform felt heavier today, and even the cold air of the academy carried tension. When he entered the mess hall, conversation stopped. Forks hovered mid-air. Across the room, the reptilian instructor, Commander Drath, watched him with calculating eyes. "Human," Drath said, his voice echoing against the metal walls. "You will report to the behavioral chamber immediately." Elias didn't argue. He stood, calm, and followed the instructor through the long corridor lined with blue lights. His footsteps echoed softly, while other cadets pretended not to stare. When the heavy doors slid open, he stepped into a vast, circular room filled with transparent walls. Behind them were scientists, pale-skinned, eyeless beings from the planet Varn, their fingers twitching over holographic controls. "Subject, human Elias," one of them said. "We will begin the replication test." In the center of the room stood a smaller creature, chained, trembling. Its skin shimmered like liquid bronze, eyes wide and fearful. Elias felt an ache in his chest. They had made it afraid on purpose. The instructor's tone was cold. "Bond with this one," he ordered. "Let's see if your miracle can happen twice." Elias didn't move at first. The lights above burned bright, humming with a mechanical rhythm. He looked into the creature's eyes and whispered, "It's all right." The scientists exchanged glances, adjusting their instruments. They were waiting for a reaction, for proof that it was a trick, a fluke, or worse, a weapon. Elias took one step closer, and the creature whimpered. He could feel its fear in his chest, not as sound but as vibration, as if its heart was knocking against his own. He knelt down slowly, the way one might approach a wounded animal. Then he whistled, softer this time, barely audible. The air trembled. The creature's breathing slowed, then steadied. Its tail twitched, eyes blinking in confusion. Then it lowered its head. The monitors flared with impossible readings, neural resonance spreading beyond known limits. Drath's claws scraped the floor. "Enough," he snapped. "It's not possible. There must be interference." But the creature had already moved closer, pressing its forehead gently against Elias's hand. The contact was brief, but in that moment, something passed between them. Emotion, memory, something wordless and ancient. The room filled with a strange sound, almost like a sigh from the walls themselves. Every instrument flickered out. When the power returned, Elias stood alone. The creature was beside him, unchained, quiet. The glass walls flickered with warning signs. Scientists yelled over one another, demanding data logs. One phrase repeated through their chaos: "No connection detected." The instructor glared. "You are not just a student now," he said. "You are a threat to balance." Elias said nothing. He just looked at the creature, who looked back as if understanding something far deeper than words. It followed him even as guards arrived to escort him to isolation. They tried to pull the beast away, but it refused to move. When they pushed it, it snarled, not at them, but in defense of the human. By the time they forced Elias into the isolation chamber, every guard was trembling. The door sealed with a hiss. The creature was dragged away, but its cries echoed down the hall like a promise. Hours passed. The isolation room was dim and silent, filled with only the hum of machines. Elias sat on the floor thinking. What was happening to him? Why could he reach these creatures when even advanced species needed implants and control chips? He remembered the forests of Earth, not real memories, but stories his grandfather told him. Humans once hunted with wolves, rode with horses, sailed with creatures of the deep. They didn't control them. They listened. Maybe that was the difference. Maybe it wasn't power at all. It was understanding. A faint click drew his attention. The door slid open just enough for someone to step inside. It was an alien cadet, tall, covered in blue armor scales, with eyes that burned like orange glass. Elias recognized him. Rokar, top of the class, known for cruelty. He grinned. "You made us all look weak, human," he hissed. "Let's see how strong you really are without your beasts." 2 more cadets followed, closing the door behind them. Elias stayed seated, calm but alert. Rokar grabbed him by the collar and snarled. "Whistle now, little human. Whistle for help." His claws pressed against Elias's neck. Outside, alarms were silent. No one would interfere. Elias met Rokar's eyes. No fear, only quiet defiance. "You shouldn't have come here," he said softly. Before Rokar could respond, a deep vibration filled the floor. The lights dimmed. From far down the corridor came the sound of claws, hundreds of them, running in unison. The cadets froze. Then the first roar shook the walls. The beasts had come, one by one. They tore through the outer gates, unstoppable, eyes glowing with primal fury. The security feed flashed red warnings across every screen in the academy. Containment breach. All creatures mobilized. The door shattered open as the bronze creature from before charged in, its chains broken. It stood between Elias and the cadets, growling, protective. The attackers stumbled backward, terrified. The instructor appeared moments later, stunned. "They're responding to him again," he whispered. Elias stood slowly. The creature turned its head toward him, calm once more. "It's not me they follow," Elias said quietly. "It's the bond you tried to break." The instructor's eyes narrowed, but there was no anger this time, only awe. Outside, the entire academy shook as the beasts gathered around the complex, forming a silent ring. Drones flew overhead trying to record the event, but signals failed. Every creature stood still, waiting. Elias looked out through the broken wall at the gathering sea of beasts. The sky glowed red with warning lights. The alien cadets, once mocking, now stared at him with a kind of fear that felt close to reverence. He didn't speak. He only raised his hand, and somewhere in the distance, another whistle answered. The academy didn't sleep that night. Every hallway was filled with guards, alarms, and silent confusion. The lights stayed red, flickering in warning across the glass walls. Outside, in the training fields, hundreds of beasts still surrounded the compound, quiet, unmoving, as if waiting for a signal that only one person could give. Elias sat alone in a small observation chamber. The walls were transparent, so everyone could see him, but he couldn't see who was watching. Scientists whispered behind the glass, their glowing eyes tracking his every breath. Commander Drath stood beside them, tail flicking in nervous rhythm. "He's not controlling them," one scientist said. "They're responding to something older. Some instinct beyond neural command." Drath's jaw tightened. "Instinct doesn't break containment barriers. Instinct doesn't shatter steel." Inside the chamber, Elias leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes tired but calm. He could still feel the creatures outside, not their voices, not thoughts, but sensations. Hunger, loyalty, fear, protection. It was like being connected to a living ocean. Every heartbeat echoed through him like distant thunder. He didn't want it, yet it felt natural, as if this was how things were always meant to be. The door opened suddenly. Drath entered with 2 guards. "Human," he said coldly, "you've brought chaos to this place. The council demands answers." Elias didn't move. "You're afraid of what you don't understand," he said. The reptilian commander narrowed his eyes. "You misunderstand your position. You are not a prophet. You are an experiment gone wrong." Elias's lips curved slightly. "Then why are you shaking?" For a long moment no one spoke. The silence was heavy, broken only by the distant breathing of the creatures outside. Then a new sound rose, a low rhythmic thrum that vibrated through the floor. "The beasts were moving again. Containment!" shouted one of the guards. "They're surrounding the main gates." Drath spun toward the viewing glass, where flickering monitors showed the impossible. The beasts weren't attacking. They were forming lines, patterns, circling the academy like soldiers obeying silent orders. In the center of that formation was the bronze creature, Elias's bonded one. It lifted its head toward the compound and roared. The sound shook the chamber. Elias stood. "They're not angry," he said quietly. "They're waiting for me." "Sit down," Drath barked. "You'll do nothing until the council arrives." He motioned for the guards to restrain him, but the moment one stepped closer, the creature outside let out another roar. The guard froze, trembling. "You move him," he whispered. "I'm not touching that human." The commander's patience snapped. "Enough, he will obey." Elias looked at him steadily. "They don't obey me," he said. "They trust me. That's something you've never learned." Then the floor lights flickered again. Red turned to white. Her voice boomed through the intercom, a calm, deep tone that silenced everyone. "Commander Drath, this is the Galactic Council representative." "Step away from the human," Drath stiffened. The holographic projector in the center of the room shimmered, and a tall figure appeared, not reptilian, not mammal, but translucent and radiant, like light given form. "I am Chancellor Vorin," it said. "We have watched the human's actions. He will be taken to the council homeworld for evaluation," Drath protested immediately. "You can't move him." "The creatures will not be harmed," Vorin interrupted. "But if this bond is real, we must understand it." Elias's eyes narrowed. "You don't want to understand it," he said. "You want to control it." The Chancellor regarded him silently. "Control is civilization, human." "Control," Elias replied, "is fear pretending to be order." For a long, tense moment, neither moved. Then Vorin said, "Prepare for transport." The hologram vanished. Outside, the beasts shifted restlessly. The sky above the academy began to fill with ships, dark silhouettes descending like shadows. The air shimmered with magnetic hums. Drones whirled through the air, surrounding the facility. The guards stepped forward. "Move," one said sharply. Elias exhaled slowly. He didn't resist. As they escorted him out of the chamber, the beasts outside began to move again. One of the scientists shouted, "They're mirroring his path. Every creature is moving where he walks." Through the glass tunnels of the academy, Elias could see them, giant eyes glowing in the darkness, heads turning as he passed. The sound of their breathing followed him like the tide. The air trembled under the weight of so many lives connected to his heartbeat. They reached the landing platform. The council ship waited, smooth silver hull, engines humming softly. The Chancellor's voice echoed again from a comlink. "Do not resist, human." Elias turned his gaze toward the horizon, where the sun was bleeding into the atmosphere, turning the fields gold. The beasts stood there, endless ranks of living strength, silent and still. The bronze creature stepped forward, eyes fixed on him. The guard pushed Elias toward the ramp. "Go," Elias stopped. He looked back once more, meeting the creature's gaze. It tilted its head, almost human-like. Then Elias did something no one expected. He whistled again, low and soft. The response was instant. The beasts roared in unison, a sound that shook the clouds. The ground cracked under their weight. The council ship systems blared with warnings. "Interference detected. Power flux unstable." Drath shouted, "Stop him!" But no one moved. Every guard was frozen in place as the creatures advanced, step by step, surrounding the platform, but not attacking. Elias looked up at the ship and said, "If you take me, they'll follow. You'll never make it off this planet." The Chancellor's voice came through again, sharper now. "What do you want, human?" Elias's tone was quiet but firm. "Freedom for them. For me." The holographic lights flickered. The beast stopped, still watching. After a long silence, Vorin spoke again, softer. "We will consider it." Elias stepped onto the ramp, eyes still locked with his creatures. The engines began to hum again, lifting the ship slowly into the air. As it rose, the creatures below lowered their heads in unison, a final gesture of faith. From orbit, the Council ships recorded everything, one human leaving the surface, followed by thousands of beasts bowing to the ground. Drath stood alone on the platform, watching the ship disappear into the clouds. His claws trembled as he whispered, "What kind of species can command the wild itself?" Far above, Elias closed his eyes. The bond hadn't broken. Across the stars, he could still hear them, breathing, waiting, alive. The Council ship cut through the upper atmosphere, leaving the world below shrinking into a swirl of silver clouds and green fields. Elias sat by the window, his wrists bound by magnetic cuffs that glowed faintly. Across from him, two armored guards watched in silence. They were careful not to meet his eyes. Outside, lightning flickered across the planet's surface, not from a storm, but from the energy fields of restless beasts. Even from orbit, their movement could be seen, shifting like a living tide beneath the clouds. The silence inside the ship was heavy. The hum of the engines was the only sound. Elias leaned back calm, studying the ceiling lights. He could still feel them, the creatures below, like a heartbeat far away but still connected. Their thoughts weren't words, but emotions. Fear, loyalty, expectation. It was as if the bond stretched across space itself. He didn't understand how, but he knew it was real. A door hissed open, and a tall figure entered. Chancellor Vorin's projection materialized again, pure light shaped into the form of a being that barely looked alive. "Human Elias," it said in a smooth, cold tone, "your actions have drawn the attention of every world in this sector. The Council fears what it cannot measure. Do you understand the weight of that?" Elias looked up slowly. "Maybe what you fear isn't me," he said quietly. "Maybe it's that you've built a galaxy on control, and I just reminded you how small that really is." The Chancellor's light pulsed faintly. "Words of rebellion. Typical of your kind. You believe freedom is order. It is not. Freedom isn't order," Elias replied, "but without it, order becomes a cage." For a moment, Vorin said nothing. Then the light faded. The projection vanished, leaving only the echo of its voice. "We will see how long you hold your ideals when you face what waits on the homeworld." The guards remained motionless. The ship continued toward the vast, ringed planet that served as the Council's seat of Varis Prime. From space it looked like a jewel of ice and light, orbiting a blue sun. Towering citadels of glass floated above oceans of frozen mist. Ships moved like silver veins through its thin atmosphere. When the vessel docked, the hatch opened to a blinding light. Elias stepped out between two guards, wrists still bound, boots clicking on a transparent bridge that overlooked the glowing city below. The people of Avaris stopped to stare. They had heard the stories already, of the human who spoke to beasts. Some watched with awe, others with quiet hatred. He was escorted through long, spiraling halls of glass and light until they reached a wide chamber. The Council chamber. Hundreds of alien delegates sat in circular tiers that stretched upward like a cathedral, each species more different than the last. Some reptilian, others aquatic, some made entirely of crystal or vapor. At the center stood a raised platform, where Elias was placed alone under a spotlight. Chancellor Vorin's form appeared above him, towering, translucent. "You stand before the Galactic Council," it said. "You will explain the phenomenon witnessed at the Academy. You will tell us how one human can command the will of the wild." Elias looked up at the hundreds of faces staring down. "I didn't command anything," he said. I listened. A ripple of murmurs filled the chamber. One delegate slammed a clawed hand against the railing. Lies. No species can influence so many without devices. It's mind control. Elias shook his head. It's not control. You think domination is the only language life understands. But the beasts don't obey me. They trust me. There's a difference. Vorin's voice sharpened. Trust is not measurable. What you describe is chaos. The balance of power cannot exist if one being can sway every living creature. Elias's gaze was steady. Maybe that balance was never real. Maybe it only worked because you silenced everything that didn't fit your order. The lights flickered, just slightly, as if the chamber itself reacted to his words. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. He speaks like an ancient, one whispered. Then a new sound rose, a faint rumble, distant but unmistakable. The council members turned toward the skylights that arched above the chamber. The sound grew louder, a vibration deep enough to shake the floor. The guards glanced at one another in panic. What is that? A technician at a control console stammered. Surface sensors detecting life signatures, thousands, tens of thousands. Vorin's glow pulsed brighter. Impossible! We are in orbit. Elias closed his eyes. The hum he'd felt since leaving the planet grew stronger now, rushing through him like wind through open doors. The bond hadn't weakened with distance. It had expanded. Every creature that had once answered his whistle now reached for him across space. They followed, he murmured. Suddenly, the chamber's walls erupted with light. The holographic screens showed the unimaginable. Space around Avaris Prime, filling with massive shapes. Winged creatures flew in vacuum. Bodies sheathed in energy fields, roaring soundlessly through the void. Others crawled along the planet's upper atmosphere, forming spirals that shimmered like living constellations. The delegates shouted in terror. They've come for him! Guards raised their weapons, but Vorin's voice boomed. Hold your fire! Elias opened his eyes and looked up at the swirling lights above. You see, he said softly, you tried to cage what was free. You forgot that freedom doesn't stay silent. Vorin's voice lowered to a whisper only he could hear. What are you, human? Elias took a breath. A reminder. The beasts moved closer, encircling the orbital towers. Yet they did not attack. They only waited. A living storm held still by one quiet heartbeat. The council chamber trembled under the weight of their presence. Vorin's light flickered uncertainly. If you can call them off, he said slowly, perhaps we can learn from you. Together. Elias looked up through the glass dome, eyes calm and distant. You don't learn by owning, he said. You learn by listening. He lifted his head slightly and let out a low, soft whistle, one note, carried through the silence of the chamber. Outside, the beasts responded. The energy around them dimmed. One by one they turned away, the shapes dissolving into the clouds and the starlit void beyond. The council sat in stunned silence. Elias lowered his head again. They were never mine, he said quietly. They just remembered what you forgot. The guards lowered their weapons. The hall was silent, except for the slow hum of the planet's rings. Somewhere deep in that silence, the galaxy itself seemed to breathe again. For hours after the beasts vanished into the darkness of space, the council chamber remained utterly still. No one dared to speak. The great tiers of alien delegates sat frozen in their seats, faces flickering with the glow of data screens that no longer made sense. The readings were broken, their instruments confused by what they had just witnessed. Life forms surviving in vacuum, obeying no known biological law, responding to a single whistle from a single human. Elias stood at the center of the vast hall, silent and calm. His hands were still bound, though every guard in the room hesitated to come near him. The air felt different now, thicker, charged, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Outside the glass dome above, the blue sun of Avaris burned quietly, casting rays that seemed softer than before. Finally, Chancellor Vorin spoke. "Human Elias," he said, his tone measured, almost cautious, "you have altered the laws that govern the galaxy's understanding of sentience. What you have done defies science, command, and reason. "You will not leave this world until we understand you." Elias didn't answer. He simply looked around the chamber, his gaze meeting the eyes of dozens of species, some curious, some afraid, some deeply humbled. "Understanding doesn't come from cages," he said quietly. "You'll learn nothing by locking me away." Vorin's light pulsed faintly, uncertain. "Then what would you have us do?" "Come with me," Elias said. "See what I see," the council murmured in confusion. Vorin's form shimmered. "You mean—" "Go to them." "Yes," Elias replied. "You keep calling them beasts, but they're not mindless. They feel, they remember, and they have waited for someone to listen. If you want to understand the bond, you must witness it where it began." The council erupted into noise, arguments, shouts, fear. "Impossible," cried a crystalline delegate. "Those creatures would devour us." Another voice hissed, "The human means to lure us into an ambush." Vorin silenced them with a wave of light. "Enough." He turned back to Elias. "You will not command us, human, but you will show us." Within the hour, a transport vessel was prepared. It was small, sleek, and built for diplomacy, not battle. Vorin would accompany Elias personally, his light projection anchored by an energy core inside the ship. A handful of guards, tense and silent, took positions along the walls. Elias's restraints were removed, though the guards kept their weapons ready. As the ship left orbit, Avaris shrank behind them, a pale, ringed jewel fading into shadow. Ahead lay the world where it all began, the Academy planet. Elias stood near the viewport, watching the stars drift by. Vorin's voice echoed softly beside him. "Tell me, human," he said, "why do they obey you? Even the most advanced telepaths cannot do what you do." Elias didn't look away from the stars. "They don't obey," he said. "They choose." Vorin tilted his glowing head. "Choice implies reason. Are you saying these creatures think like us?" Elias turned to face him. "No, they don't think like you. They feel deeper than you ever could." The Chancellor's form flickered uneasily. "Emotion is chaos." Elias smiled faintly. "It's also connection." Hours passed. The silence between them grew heavier. When the planet finally appeared ahead, green oceans, silver mountains, and a faint storm swirling over the horizon, something stirred in the distance of Elias's mind. It was faint at first, like a distant echo, then stronger, the pulse of hundreds of hearts waiting. "They know we're coming," he whispered. The ship entered the atmosphere. Lightning danced through violet clouds. The guards gripped their seats as turbulence rocked the hull. Below, shapes began to move across the plains, enormous shifting shadows, beasts gathering in silence. When they landed, the ramp opened slowly. Warm air swept in, carrying the scent of soil and ozone. The ground was trembling, not from machines, but from movement. Thousands of creatures surrounded the landing site, stretching beyond sight. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, colors shimmering across scales, feathers, and fur. The guards raised their weapons instinctively. "Stay alert!" one shouted. Vorin's light flickered, nervous. "Do they intend to attack?" Elias shook his head and stepped forward. "No, they're welcoming us." He walked down the ramp alone, boots pressing into the soft dirt. The closest creature, the bronze one, his first bond, stepped forward and lowered its massive head. Elias reached out, placing a hand against its warm skin. The creature closed its eyes, and the field of beasts behind it let out a low, unified sound, not a roar, but a deep hum that resonated through the air like music. The guards froze. Vorin descended a few meters, the light of his form flickering across the beasts' shining backs. "Extraordinary," he murmured. They sing. They remember," Elias corrected softly. "They sing when they feel peace." He turned and looked at the Chancellor. "Now you see, they don't need masters. They only need respect. You call them wild because you forgot what harmony feels like." Vorin's voice was quieter now, almost unsure. "And you, human? What are you to them?" Elias's expression softened. "I don't know. Maybe just someone who listened when no one else did." The bronze creature made a sound, soft, affectionate. Elias smiled faintly. "They don't follow orders, Chancellor. They follow understanding. That's the only real power worth having. For a long time, no one spoke. The beasts stood silently, their eyes reflecting the clouds. The guards lowered their weapons one by one. Even Vorin seemed to dim slightly, his voice trembling. Perhaps we've been blind for too long." Elias nodded. "You built a galaxy on control. But control only lasts until something stronger remembers what freedom is." Vorin looked around at the endless ranks of living beings. "And what now, human? What happens when the Council cannot contain what you've shown them?" Elias looked toward the horizon, where the sky was breaking open with light. "Then maybe it's time the galaxy learns to coexist instead of command." The bronze creature lifted its head and roared again, not in defiance, but in triumph. The sound rolled across the fields like thunder, and for the first time, Vorin didn't recoil. He stood in silence, watching a world reborn under the song of beasts, and one human who had reminded them what it meant to be free. The guards bowed their heads. The air grew still. The sun broke through the clouds, golden and warm, falling across Elias's face. He breathed deeply, feeling the connection stretch not just through the creatures, but through the very ground beneath his feet. And for the first time in the history of the Galactic Council, control gave way to understanding, and silence gave way to life. The dawn that broke over the Academy plains was unlike any other in living memory. Golden light spilled across the horizon, catching on the metallic hides of beasts that stood in perfect stillness. The air shimmered with heat and dust. For the first time, the galactic flag that fluttered over the training complex didn't feel like a symbol of power, but of curiosity, trembling before something greater. Elias stood beside the bronze creature at the center of the gathering. Around him, the other beasts watched with eyes that reflected the rising sun. The guards had lowered their weapons completely now, too stunned to resist what they saw. Chancellor Vorin's light form hovered nearby, the glow of his body softer than before, almost reverent. The hum that passed through the beasts felt alive, a deep, slow rhythm that merged with the wind, the soil, and even the distant hum of the ships overhead. "What are they doing?" one guard whispered. "They're waiting," Elias said. Vorin tilted his radiant head. "For what?" "For us to listen." The bronze creature shifted slightly, letting out a low tone that vibrated through the ground. Another answered from far away, then another. Soon the entire valley echoed with sound, rising and falling, a chorus of living power. The council had once called them wild monsters, incapable of thought or feeling. Now even the most skeptical among them stood trembling as they witnessed something more ancient than civilization itself. Communication without technology, harmony without command. Elias closed his eyes and let the sound wash through him. Each note wasn't just noise, it carried emotion, memory, story. He could feel images bloom behind his eyelids, ancient forests on worlds long forgotten, oceans where creatures once sang beneath alien moons, and humans, primitive, fearless, walking among them as equals. It was the same memory that had whispered to him during his first bond, the same pulse that connected life itself. When he opened his eyes, Vorin was watching him. "They're showing you something, aren't they?" the Chancellor asked softly. Elias nodded. "They're reminding me who we were." Vorin's light flickered with confusion. "We? Humans," Elias said. "We forgot. Long ago, before the machines, before the walls. We could hear them once, not with our ears, but with our hearts." For the first time, the Chancellor's tone carried no arrogance. "If that's true," he said, "then perhaps your kind is not as primitive as we believed." Elias smiled faintly. "No one is primitive, Chancellor, just disconnected." Before Vorin could respond, the hum of the beasts changed. The tone deepened, becoming urgent, almost mournful. Their eyes shifted toward the sky. A dark shadow passed overhead, sharp, fast, mechanical. A fleet, the guards shouted in panic. "Incoming ships! Not council identification!" Vorin's glow pulsed sharply. Who would dare approach this world? The answer came quickly. The skies filled with streaks of red light, engines roaring, weapons charging. It was the Dominion, a rival empire that had long envied the council's control. They had heard of the beasts and the human who commanded them, and they wanted the power for themselves. Explosions rippled through the upper atmosphere. Missiles struck the distant ridges, shaking the ground. The beasts roared as one, their unified cry shaking the clouds. Elias looked to Vorin. "Call off your defenses." Vorin's voice wavered. "Are you mad?" "They'll destroy us all." Elias shook his head. "No, they'll destroy themselves." He stepped forward, placing a hand on the bronze creature's flank. Its massive chest rumbled with energy. All around, the other beasts began to move, slowly, purposefully, forming ranks that stretched across the valley. They weren't panicking. They were preparing. Vorin turned toward him in disbelief. "You can't possibly think they can fight ships." Elias looked up, eyes calm. "They don't need to fight. They just need to remember." He whistled once. The sound cut through the chaos, pure, unwavering, alive. Every beast stopped, eyes flashing in unison. A strange light began to ripple across their bodies, like bioluminescent fire flowing through veins. The ground itself trembled. Then one by one they began to glow brighter. The ships in the sky opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked down. But the moment they struck, they dissolved into harmless bursts of light, scattering like sparks against invisible shields. The beasts roared, releasing waves of energy that rippled upward. It wasn't aggression, it was resonance, pure frequency. The air shimmered with color, and suddenly the Dominion fleet's systems began to fail. Inside their ships, alarms screamed. Circuits melted. Targeting arrays flickered into static. The pilots shouted in confusion as the creatures below, creatures that shouldn't even survive space, unleashed harmonics powerful enough to disrupt the weapons themselves. Within minutes, the fleet was forced to retreat, engines sputtering, formation breaking. From the surface, the spectacle was breathtaking. Thousands of beasts glowing like stars, voices merged into one great pulse of life that reached into the heavens. When it was over, the valley was silent again. The skies cleared. The beasts slowly dimmed, their glow fading to normal. The air smelled of ozone and warmth. Vorin floated forward slowly, his light trembling. They defended us." Elias looked out over the plains, his voice quiet. "They defended life, not sides." The Chancellor said nothing for a long time. When he finally spoke, his tone was changed, softer, uncertain, but humbled. "Perhaps control was never what held the galaxy together," he murmured. "Perhaps it was fear." Elias turned to him. "And fear is only powerful until someone stops believing in it." The sun rose higher. The beasts began to lie down, resting, the ground moving like a slow heartbeat beneath them. The guards removed their helmets, staring at the horizon, as if seeing it for the first time. Vorin's projection dimmed until it was almost transparent. "Human Elias," he said, "you have shown us something our empires forgot. We came here to contain you. Now I think we must learn from you." Elias looked toward the horizon, where the faint shimmer of retreating ships disappeared into the sky. "Don't learn from me," he said softly. "Learn from them. From the way they protect without hate. The way they listen without words." The bronze creature shifted beside him, its massive head turning toward the rising light. Elias placed his hand on its skin once more, feeling the slow, steady rhythm of its heartbeat. "You see?" he said quietly, glancing at the Chancellor. "They never needed control. They only needed trust." Vorin's glow warmed like sunrise. "Then perhaps, human, it is time we remember what trust feels like." As the beasts settled into the grass and the world fell silent again, Elias looked up into the sky, where the stars shimmered faintly beyond daylight. For the first time since the galaxy had discovered humanity, the balance of power had shifted, not through conquest, but through understanding. And somewhere deep in that endless network of life and light, something stirred. Not war, not rebellion, but awakening.